My name is David Charles. Welcome to this Connect phone-in podcast of Tuesday the 23rd of April 2024. Our interview today is with Matthew Randolph, a man who has recently been catapulted to high rankings in the local media for Gloucestershire. This is, I believe, partly the result of recent events involving accusations made of councillors, but also a deep dissatisfaction in the way our councils and our police services operate. Some weeks ago, a channel we have been following revealed an extraordinary occurrence that took place at a council meeting in Gloucester. The channel I'm referring to is Council Watch, and it was set up by two enterprising ladies concerned about what was happening and not happening in their own local council of Colchester. In under 6 months, their YouTube channel has gained an audience of nearly 8,000 and has encouraged people in other areas of the country to establish Council Watch in their own towns and counties. So why Council Watch? Well, the motivation behind this noble initiative is to ask basic questions of councillors about their beliefs, their understandings, and not least their policies towards things like climate change, electric vehicles and their inherent dangers, and not least the issues surrounding the rollout of 5G, among numerous other topics. The link to the channel Council Watch is provided in the show notes below. But now it's my pleasure to introduce my guest today to talk with us about what exactly happened in the council chamber in Gloucester a few weeks ago and what he, Matthew Randolph, is hoping will happen within the next few weeks. Matthew, welcome to this phone-in podcast.
Hello, David. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure indeed. Well, I think it was a rumpus organised session in the Gloucester Chamber a few weeks ago. But before we get into that, I wonder if you could answer us a few questions, Matthew. You're standing as a candidate in the Gloucester election on the 2nd of May, that's a few days away from now, hoping to become the duly elected next Police and Crime Commissioner. Fantastic.
Yes, correct.
What has promoted you to stand in this election?
We used to have a police force, police service we could be proud of, and now they're just acting for our government and non-government organisations. So their hands are tied with policing, and they've basically just become policy enforcers for our government, who, as we know, over the last 4 years, have committed serious crimes at all levels, and the police haven't protected the people.
Right, when you say the police haven't protected the people, have you got something, you must have something in particular in mind to describe for that?
Well, there's always been enough evidence with the lockdowns. They were unnecessary. The safe and effective treatments that could have been used for COVID that were withheld. All these, the fraud of if you want to protect grandma, get your grandkids vaccinated. That's a fraudulent statement. There was never any testing done on transmission. The manufacturers of the injectables have admitted that. So it was serious fraud committed by basically our government and our councillors, which got me interested in it. Now,
I can recall listening to Matt Hancock not very long ago saying that because he was accused of breaking lockdown rules, wasn't he? But at the same time, if I remember correctly, he said it wasn't actually law, it was guidelines.
Yes.
But people, as I understand it, Matthew, people have been fined heavily for breaking guidelines, not the law, guidelines.
No.
Am I right in that?
Yeah, that's one of the main problems is the police are just enforcing policies, aren't they? Not laws anymore.
Right. And of course, this comes from top level, doesn't it? I mean, this is not something which is peculiar to the police force or police service of Gloucestershire. It's come from central government, hasn't it? This is how the police are intended to deal with people. Okay, so this is clearly this aspect alone has got you excited and has prompted you to stand in this election. So tell me, what would be your priority once elected on the 2nd of May?
Stop as much government interference in the police. Have a police service that provides a service for the people and is there to protect the people, not just to enforce the wishes of non-government organisations and their agendas that they want to bring in.
Well, this sounds very laudable, actually. My own personal belief, and it'll be true of many others, that people believe that the police should be serving the people and not in place to protect or serve the government. That's not what it's about. But you're going to be facing a lot of backtide against changing the policies and principles of Gloucestershire Police, aren't you?
Yes, but the role of the commissioner, is to hold the police accountable and give the people a voice, which is what I've been doing for the last 4 years. I probably attend our police station once a week to report crimes that are committed by our government and our council. And if they're committed by our government and our council, they just say, we're not interested, we're not going to investigate. Whereas all the other candidates put on their manifesto, all crimes matter. It's clear that if you're a political candidate, all crimes won't matter because you'll still be towing the party line and bringing in the agendas that those people have signed up to, won't you?
Yes. Well, you mentioning that caused me to remember a case where, and the name escapes me now, but a retired police officer, together with a doctor by the name of Sam White, presented a case to, and I think it was the police station in Hammersmith, a case against certain individuals in government. And from recollection, actually nothing happened about that. I mean, it was a fully documented case documenting what had gone on and what was considered to be totally unlawful. It was presented and recorded with a crime number in Hammersmith Police Station, I believe it was, and nothing happened. Now, this is one of the things that you're referring to, I think, that this is not the police as we used to know it, and many people understand it to be now. It's not that, is it? The police is not, apparently, doing what the people believe it should be doing.
Yes, they're not upholding their oath and they're not carrying out their paid duty anymore, are they? It was actually a lady from Gloucester as well that wrote the complaint with the police officer. That was sent to the International Criminal Courts in The Hague, and then that was returned by the International Criminal Courts, and they said we have to exhaust all avenues with the police first, which is what they've been doing ever since. So it's time for a bit of honesty and transparency, isn't it?
It is, totally.
Yeah.
Now you're standing as the Police and Crime Commissioner for Gloucestershire. Are you aware that there are other people like yourself, independents, that are standing for the same post but in other counties?
Well, we set up a fund to raise £5,000, which obviously was successful, and a guy from Hampshire set up the same post after we succeeded, and he's going for Commissioner in Hampshire as well.
Great.
So it is.
So there are at least two of you.
Oh yes, and with the normal election for the councillors, there's more independents this year than ever before.
Yes. Now I'm minded to remember that it wasn't very many weeks ago that George Galloway stood effectively as an independent in Rochdale.
Yes.
And that's for a parliamentary seat, of course, and he won it hands down. I mean, are we looking at a situation here, Matthew, where people are generally, I don't think it's too bad to say, disgusted with what's happening in politics today, and are turning perhaps now in great numbers towards independence?
Most definitely, yes. Yeah, everyone we spoke to is... they all know that the tri-parties have all signed up to the same agreements, don't they? So it doesn't matter which party you vote for, they're just going to implement the agendas of the non-government organisations and the corporations.
Yes.
So we're not getting a say anymore, are we?
Well, do you know what? As you're saying that, I was thinking a debate that happened in Parliament just last week. It was on Thursday, and the debate was headed by Andrew Bridgen, and the subject was excess deaths. Now, this is something which Andrew Bridgen has been trying to get debated in Parliament for some long while. And it was extraordinary that out of 650 MPs, you'll know this, I'm sure, 650 MPs that should be debating subjects of prime interest, and excess deaths, you might imagine, is one of those. There couldn't have been more than 20 MPs in that chamber. And Andrew Bridgen, has said before that members of Parliament are under instructions not to attend debates led by Andrew Bridgen.
Yes, I quite believe it.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's, people have to wonder now, I think, and seriously, about the sense of parliamentary and parties being involved in government. I mean, there is an argument, I think, for government to be constituted, and the whole of Parliament constituted, with 100% independence. But that's perhaps a subject for another day.
Oh, it'd be lovely, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But you were involved in a broadcast with, I think, one of the main channels. It might have been the BBC, and I think you were talking about various subjects which you're particularly passionate about. I wonder if you'd like to touch on those subjects for us now, Matthew.
We brought up the PPE scandal, where lots of our MPs made millions of pounds through the PPE scandal. There's also evidence out that lots of MPs invested in pharmaceutical companies only months before we knew we were going to have a pandemic. We also, what else did we go on about? We spoke about the excess deaths, and I pointed out that one of the chief medical officers has informed the COVID inquiry that the BBC did mislead people over the need for the injections and the safety and efficacy. Then we went on to the 5G, and we pointed out that our council in Gloucester are using certificates of conformity to pass planning applications, but the certificates come from a company called 3UK Limited, and that company was dissolved in 2015. So it's not a legal entity, it's got no directors, no insurance and no liability. We've spoke to the planning inspectorate, and they said they're aware of it, and that it is, they've said international fraud, and Companies House have confirmed that yes, the company doesn't exist. It was shut down in 2015. So we reported that again to Gloucestershire Constabulary, who said they've spoke to the council and there's no further action going to be taken. So these towers are uninsurable for harm to humans, and now they're using fake certificates of conformity to pass the planning, and they're not carrying out the public consultations they should do. I've got one just up the road from me, and the IPNA certificates guidelines don't cover you if you've got metal implants. And after years of riding motorbikes, I've got pins and plates in my leg and pins and plates in my arm, so I'm not covered by it. So I was quite passionate to find out more about the safety certificates that they're claiming are valid, which clearly aren't.
And this is a point. This is a point that you raised in the council chamber, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. We asked. You have to write to the council the week before and ask if you can ask a question. So we started asking the question. They stopped it because we kept saying it was fraudulent and the certificates were fraudulent. And they said, well, we'll phone the police. I said, well, that's fine. I said, we're not doing anything wrong. We're just standing here waiting to finish our question. So the police turned up, and the two officers, two ladies, were lovely. We explained the situation to them, and they agreed it's a civil matter, it's a public meeting, and I had been told I could ask the question. So after 45 minutes, they left, and then I was allowed to continue with my question.
Right. And
all the council answered was, we believe we've done everything correctly, when we had the evidence in front of them, and we showed them that they haven't done it correctly. For a planning officer to accept a certificate from a company that doesn't exist shows they haven't done their due diligence.
And you made that clear to them?
Yes, yeah.
Now, just holding with the police for a moment, I think I've seen a video clip where I think there were two female police officers that you were talking to in the chamber. So nothing came of that. But then there was another clip which involved a male police officer, I think, and you were talking to him about the fact that you weren't causing any problems because the meeting had actually been called as completed. But he made the point that the councillors, I guess, were in fear. That's quite a strong term to use. They were in fear. I mean, I didn't see any councillors running out of the door because they were in fear. So I think that was probably overstated by that officer, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a different meeting. That was the pre-election meeting for the Police and Crime Commissioner.
Right.
And when we turned up for the meeting, there was four police officers sat outside and a sergeant inside, who said if I disrupt the meeting, I'll be arrested under the Disrupting a Public Meetings Act.
Right.
And I said, well, that's fine. I'm a candidate. I've come to ask questions. I'll put my hand up and be polite and ask questions. And at the end of the meeting, when they said the meeting's closed, I spoke to our current commissioner and asked him why he hasn't protected the people, why he hasn't investigated the crimes committed by the government, why he's allowing the council to carry on installing 5G with fraudulent certificates. And that's when the police officer said that I'm harassing them.
Right.
So
I see. So okay. So there were two separate meetings, and you've made that clear now what was going on at each. But this has caused quite a stir, isn't it, in the council itself? Because after you presented your question and made your statement about the certificates, etc., and the companies that no longer exist, if they ever did, really. What's happened in the council since, Matthew?
We've had 9 councillors resign, including the head of planning, who's moved to another council now. So we can't say that's because of what we've done, but it does look like they're trying to distance themselves, doesn't it?
Well, looking at it from a cold position, a lot of people would think, well, knowing what you've done and what you said in that council chamber that particular day, and the subject that you raised, and now there's 9 councillors that have resigned, people will put the two together very keenly, won't they? I think.
Yes.
So it doesn't look at all good. But equally, I mean, I know we're talking about Gloucestershire here, but the same problem is going to be the case elsewhere in the country, isn't it?
Yes. Some of the apparent, well, by the look of it, Gloucestershire has been one of the worst. They've just totally ignored. The other councils do seem to have done the public consultations, put up the notices, and they still come up with bad decisions and said, yes, we're going to install it because the government and the non-government organisations want it. But Gloucester have just totally ignored it and just rubber-stamped everything that's been put in front of them.
Right. And in your view, Matthew, what's to be done about this? I mean, let's say you get involved, you are elected on the 2nd of May. This is a police and crime commissioner role, of course, and not head of the council. But what can you do you think, to redress the balance here?
Well, the role of the crime commissioner is to hold the chief constable accountable. So we would need to know why the chief constable hasn't investigated any of the crimes reported to them. They do answer to the Home Office, but in their operational duties, they have to be independent. So the police say that all crime matters. So if a councillor or an MP has committed a crime, it has to be investigated. They can't just say it's an MP and it's part of the agenda that they want to bring in, so we're not going to do anything. We've got laws and rights in this country to protect us. Yes,
and most people believe that, don't they? But it seems that
yes.
The train has fallen off the rails somewhere along the line here.
Yeah. Yes, it has.
Okay, well, we're days away now from the election on the 2nd of May. What's your gut feeling about your prospects of being elected as the Commissioner for Gloucestershire?
I think they're very, very worried. They didn't think we'd raise the money. They didn't think we'd get 100 nominations. But we've had groups from Stroud, Cheltenham, Tewkesbury, all the areas. We've had absolutely brilliant support. The main thing is we're hearing is that everybody's had enough of the three parties and want to vote independent. They want to see change. It can't carry on as it is, can it?
Well, I understand what you're saying, and there is plenty of scope for change, for positive change, and I think I feel it myself actually, and I know many others do also, that this is the time perhaps for independents to take a much firmer grip on politics in the UK. So this is going to be a very interesting election coming up on the 2nd of May. And it'd be very interesting, Matthew, to talk to you again after the 2nd of May and find out perhaps how you're going to do the first changes as far as the police are concerned. So maybe, Matthew, we could get back together sometime after that, once you get feet under the table perhaps, and talk about the subjects and the agenda which you may have in mind at that time.
Okay.
Matthew, this has been delightful. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon to talk about this election and what happened in Gloucester Chamber with the councillors. That's most enlightening indeed. But as I say, we will look forward to speaking with you again, perhaps after the 2nd of May, and find out what the next steps are. And perhaps at that time, we'll take a view on what's happened in the election across the country to see what landscape lies ahead for us all.
It's going to be a good election, I think. We're going to have quite a few independents throughout the country.
I think you're right. And we shall look forward to seeing what happens there. Matthew, thank you very much for your time today. And
thank you.
I can't say the best of luck, but on the basis, I hope the right result for the country and for Gloucestershire happens. I'll say that.
Thank you very much, David.
Our pleasure. And you too. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.